Hello and welcome to another episode of THEOLOGEEZ. I'm your host, Charvel Holder-Dobard, here with another dive into a different type of belief. Today we're talking about African beliefs, we're talking about voodoo, we're talking about ancient African ways and kind of what could have been if it wasn't stripped from our slavery ancestors. We'll also talk about the origins a little bit, and to dive into this topic, I'm bringing up a friend of mine from college, Danielle DeCourcey, who is a writer, a journalist, among many other things, and just a great person. And I actually did a table reading of one of her pilots that she had written, and I noticed that she had done a lot of research on voodoo, so I thought she would be pretty cool to tap into for this discussion. And so I'm going to bring her up now. Let's see how she's doing. She's also coming to us from Barbados.
Hi.
Hey. Awesome.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me.
No, this is great. I'm excited to be here. I'm trying to give you an international plug.
I know, it's so cool. It's like I'm just, like an international podcast, no big deal. But also so glad that we could make it work with the time difference, because that's honestly sometimes the trickiest part.
It's 4 hours because Barbados doesn't do daylight saving, so it's not even East Coast time. It's even bigger. So
I know. I had no idea, which it makes sense. I this year was like, do we have to do it? I don't want to.
I truly complain every single time because I'm not a farmer, so I'm just confused about why I'm doing this. And it confuses me every year. Every year, I don't know what time
it just doesn't make sense to me. And now the sun is setting even before 5, and it is so depressing. And you look at the clock and it's 8 p.m., but it feels like it's 1 in the morning. Oh, anyways, there's the worst things happening to complain about. But thank you so much. I'm excited to dive into this discussion because I was watching a lot of videos and documentaries and stuff like that. And it's just stuff I don't know, because I feel like not only has Christianity kind of put this black label on voodoo and anything that's traditional African belief systems, but also the media, the way the media portrays voodoo. So as a TV writer and just a journalist, I want to get into that a little bit later as well. But let's start with our classic icebreaker. So I do a different one each time. We are gonna do 2 truths and 1 lie. I feel like it's pretty classic orientation, first day at the job, whatever it may be.
My job actually does this. Yeah,
exactly. It's play group, let's get together. We're gonna play this super fun game.
And then Bob tells a really inappropriate story. Just to start it off.
Right. Or somebody is so outlandish that you're they're all true, or I hope none of them are true.
Right.
But yeah, so okay. Do you want to go first or should I go first?
You should go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm gonna try and think of some good things here.
Okay.
Let's see. A lie. Okay, let's see. It's hard. Oh man. Okay. So, this is kind of sad, but we're all grown up. Okay, so my childhood priest. So I was raised Roman Catholic. For people who have tuned in before, this. So I was raised Catholic. My childhood priest was murdered.
My dear Lord. Okay, go ahead.
So that's one.
Okay.
I didn't get baptized until I was 6, within the Catholic Church. And let's see, a third one I would say is that when I was confirmed at 14, I wrote in my journal that I was doing it for myself and not for my mom, I swear.
These are so Catholic. So I'm going to talk you through my thought process.
Okay.
The first one feels very specific. So I think it might be true. However, I do feel like you're good at this. And so you could have prefaced with, I think this is going to be sad, to set me up to fall into the trap. So I'm not sure what to do now.
So it was
going to say,
yeah, it is super Catholic. Priest, baptism, or confirmation, basically.
I'm just going to say that the lie is the murder, because that was my first instinct.
No, that was real.
Oh my God.
And so traumatic for our church.
I mean, sure.
Yeah, it was.
What happened? Now I need to know. I love true crime.
So the rumor mill, and I was probably like 7. So this is what I heard as a 7-year-old, was that somebody had gone into the, I don't know, the priest's chambers or whatever, and they were trying to look for the gold, right? Because they put like the Eucharist in gold and the wine in gold, and there's a lot of gold typically in a Catholic church. And they were trying to get all the gold, and then the priest found them and got caught. And I want to say, like, if memory serves me correct, he was stabbed to death. Like, not even like shot, like brutally stabbed.
You gotta close the whole church. You just gotta close. You gotta close it down.
It was like so heartbreaking for our church. Everybody loved him. Like, he used to come into our like little CCD catechism class and like sing with us. And yeah, I just remember them being like, he's not with us anymore. And then my mom is all about the tea and the goss. So she was like, oh yeah, like what happened?
No, I get it. My mom would have like Gwen Eiffel it. Like, she would have had the play-by-play, the security cam footage.
Yeah.
Everyone at the grocery store. It's true. That's
right.
wild. That is a wild thing.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened, but it's definitely something that was a part of my childhood that I repressed. And then I was just like, let me see, I'm going to put this cool game, 2 Truths and a Lie. What can I bring up? And then it like literally just popped into my head.
It's not funny, but it is that is the one you went with.
Like, that's how sick it is.
Oh my God. Well, I'm sorry that happened to you.
It's okay.
And glad that you have the story, but I don't know.
Yeah, it builds character, I suppose.
It does. It does.
I'm
trying to think of some. I'm stalling currently because I'm.
Well,
trying
I'll just tell you my lie. While
you please do.
So I was baptized at, right after birth. So I wasn't baptized at 6 years old, which is something I talk about on another episode, because I'm like, I feel like you should be older, like, because Jerry, my husband, is Mormon, and they get baptized at 7, where it's like, okay, you've been in the church a while, you can kind of decide. But my idea is that, like, I feel like you shouldn't be baptized until you're an adult and like you fully recognize, like, this is the choice I'm making, this is what I want to do. Because
that's why I thought that could be true, because in Protestantism, a lot of the time you're older. Your children too sometimes, but like a lot of the time you're older. So I was like, that feels reasonable.
Okay, so I got you a little bit, yeah. But it's like I've known people who have gotten baptized like as adults, and you find your church or whatever. So I was like, okay, I think this will tip her off. But yeah, but the journal about my confirmation my mom just sent me it from like cleaning out my room, and I found it and I was like, dang, that's real. We're getting confirmed today. I swear we're doing it because we want to, not because mom said we have to. I was like, oh gosh. Pathetic.
No, I get it. That's they want you to, they want you to feel the guilt.
Real.
All right, I think I have some.
Okay.
Okay. First one is I got kicked out of a church van for fighting. Fist fighting.
Okay.
I had sex in a church basement. Or I was baptized at least 3 times that I can recall.
Whoa. Ooh, these are good. Oh, gosh. As soon as you said the fist fighting one, I was like, this checks out. I feel I was like, yeah, I think she did that. But the sex in the basement is like, that's risky, but it's also like, I feel like pretty doable for a lot of church basements. Frowned upon or whatever, but
certainly frowned upon.
And then the multiple baptisms is interesting to me. I'm gonna go with the multiple baptisms.
The lie is I have never had sex in a church.
Okay. Well, bless your heart. We're withholding from having sex in the church basement.
I felt like that one seemed like it was like too outrageous to be like, but no,
Yeah.
I was baptized. So my mom is Protestant, like Baptist adjacent. It's it has its Kingdom Empowerment Center in Cambridge. It used to be called First Holiness, and that was her lifelong church. Then she moved to Taunton, which is a city right outside of Boston, and then she had a different church there that was more like non-denominational. And then my dad's family are all Irish Catholic, and so I was baptized twice when I was first born, and then three other times that I can actually remember in Protestant churches. So, because when you get a little bit older, they do the thing where you like choose to do it.
Yeah.
And so, I've been baptized like many times, many times.
You're like very saved.
Extremely safe.
So you could probably have sex in a basement and be okay.
I don't know. I feel like that's like how you get sued for something.
Oh, probably.
Sued by my childhood pastor for.
Oh my goodness!
But I did get into a argument with my cousin in a church van once.
And your cousin?
Yeah, and I truly don't remember what it was about. And I just remember like I punched him in the arm, and then it was like a pull the van over type of deal, and then like we got yelled at, and that was pretty much it.
Oh, but it happened, so that's what matters. True.
Yeah, it's true.
But I feel like this is a good segue into our next part, which is what do you believe? So we know now that you were like raised in like different multiple churches, but like I guess in like a succinct way, how would you say you were raised versus like what you believe now?
I think I actually wouldn't say that there's a huge difference between how I was raised foundationally and what I believe now, except for the fact that I don't think African religion was sort of demonized is probably too strong, but it was something that was respected in the sense that on my mom's side, people believe that like a person can have certain powers, or if they are dabbling in voodoo, people believe that that is a real thing.
Yeah.
But that was something to be afraid of, or to not, stay away from that. Something bad could happen to you. I think I'm much more of a universalist in terms of if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, and all of the denominations within those things. I pretty much think we're all talking about the same things. And so, and even people who don't really identify with an organized religion and have like spiritual beliefs, I think we're kind of all talking about the same thing, honestly. And that's a little bit different in terms of, I think Christianity really tries to push the one God thing. You're being disrespectful if you dare to look at another type of religion. But my mom isn't that way. And so I wasn't really raised without that kind of like, Muslims are going to go to hell or something. Like that's insane. So I wasn't raised with that idea. My mom has a much more like open approach. That's just the tradition that she had. So that's what she gave me.
Refreshing, honestly.
Yeah. And then Catholic, there was times in my childhood where I'd be in church for like 4 hours because my grandparents on both sides, my great aunt, I should say, and my grandparents on my father's side helped raise me. So I would a lot of the time be at Catholic church in Roslindale in the morning, Boston, and then go to Cambridge to go to Black Caribbean church. And so that was a whole Sunday.
Wow.
Churching in two very different ways of going about it. But I think the main difference now is that I am more interested in a lot of different things, and I think that I'm more conscious of the politics of religion than a lot of the people in my family previously were. Like, who gave you your religion? Who told you how it had to be? Where did that come from? Is huge, I think, in how you perceive it and how you can actually live your life in it.
Right.
And it's supposed to be for you,
Mm-hmm.
and what the purpose of that is, I think are questions that I try to ask.
Yeah.
That people weren't necessarily asking when I was a kid.
No, definitely. No, I feel that. And the one thing that you said that really resonated with me was that like we're all like kind of talking about the same thing, because like for me, I was Roman Catholic, then I thought I was like atheist, I didn't believe in anything, but then I'm becoming like very spiritual and like just with the universe. And for the longest time, like when people would be like God, I was like, I don't say God, I don't believe in God. But now it's like I don't have a problem saying God, because I know that essentially I'm saying the same thing as you, but I know what it means to me is just the universe as a whole. So it's like, and that's the thing, is like we evolve as humans and we have to adapt and we have to figure things out for ourselves. And that's what I think religion is really about, is like finding what works for you. I truly believe that religion is like a coping mechanism for life. Like it's just how we're able to answer the unknown and like give ourselves like a little peace of mind and carry out our lives without like being worried about like, okay, what's going to happen when I'm not here anymore? Or, like, oh, this is worrying me, let me pray, or let me pray to the certain saint, or whatever it may be. And so I feel like in that way, I've never been able to like scorn religion at all. And I've been super grateful for what like my upbringing did in the Catholic Church and all the things that I gained from being raised religiously. But I just feel like as an adult, I didn't need that, like I needed to create my own coping mechanisms for this crazy thing called life. So that's kind of where I stand right now. But like kind of towards the end, like leads us into our first segment here, which is just a seedling. As you talk to roots, I was trying to like tie everything back into that.
This is fancy.
I know, right? I'm like so professional. So just a seedling, because I feel like I want to talk back, like you were raised Caribbean, your mom is she is from Barbados, right?
Her family is. She lived here for a little while. She has lived in Boston though.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, because my dad is from Trinidad, but he lived there until he was 10, so he's like very Americanized at this point. But he was like in Trinidad, he was raised very strictly at Catholic schools, Catholic churches. So, like the spanking kind, like the whipping kind. So when he came to America and, he had his family, he was like, I'm not about church. He's like, I remember him always saying, I got enough church for the rest of my days, like in Trinidad. Like that's how he felt. But it's like
always so interesting to me that the Catholic Church thought, I know how we'll get people super invested in religion. We'll beat the shit out of them.
Right.
For a generation. And then they're going to grow up and they're going to be so scared of us that they're just going to want to what?
They will tell all the future generations that this is fact. This is what they must believe, because they literally beat it into us. But
they used to the nuns used to beat them at school. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, that takes us back to even slavery, where it's like they kind of, whip them for not conforming to their Catholic Christianity ways. But when we talk about, geography and the history of, humankind, it's like we all came from Africa, it's like that is something that scientists really do know. And so it's just like, it's interesting to me that, folks could have migrated and created new belief systems and then go back to like originally their like ancestral place and be like, you can't believe this anymore. Like, this is not right. It's like, okay, but you are from this, you are of this, essentially. Like your ancestors prayed in this same way and believed these same things. So it's just so interesting to me how we can like just turn, and even like a few generations, like just turn on our own people. What are your thoughts on like the start of humankind, and even like Adam and Eve? We can talk about a little bit, because I feel like they're always portrayed as this white man and this white woman, but if they were to have been real, like they would not have been white.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Adam and Eve thing, I think the reason that we're all taught that they're white or perceived to be white comes back to all of the things you were talking about, which is like, it's all about power. And I think the thing that has driven a lot of people from our generation away from organized religion is that once you take that belief system and infuse it with power and politics, because religion has always been associated with those things, it becomes a tool, and you use a tool, the tool is representative of who's using it. So if you want to use it to do bad things, you can use it to do bad things. So, if we're talking about Black people in Christianity, Black people came from Africa, and there is plenty of argument Christianity had been in Africa already. They came with their own belief system, a lot of root work, a lot of working with herbs and botanicals and things that we're told are superstitions. But the part that they leave out is white people believed in all of that when they had the slaves here. They would have their slaves. We're talking about Obeah, Voo Doo, Santeria. They're by no means the same, but they all have similar elements coming from Yoruba traditions. They would have their slaves come and do rituals for them. If their kids were sick, if they were sick, all of that. And essentially the reason that it started to become Black magic, bad superstition, Negro, whatever, is because they were afraid of it, because that's how powerful they actually thought it was. And there's, documented historical examples throughout the Caribbean where if there was a small slave revolt, or if something happened to a white person that they suspected a slave had been involved, that's when it started to be, it's illegal for you to do this thing now. Not because they thought it was anti-Christian. They didn't. That became a thing afterwards.
Right.
Because they were afraid of what it could do. And so I think that's a very powerful thing for African Americans to even know, is that the whole, the idea that this has become, it's disrespectful to Christ to put plants in a bowl and do a ritual is like, I don't think Jesus is threatened by that. You're threatened by that. And so like, how powerful is this that they started to create laws and actually harm people who wanted to do this? That's like the part that is interesting to me, is like, there's power in this. Whether you believe that it actually, the rituals themselves have direct effects or not, they do, because someone's afraid of it. The part with my writing that I find really interesting is like, people, the way that you can politicize a belief system to just get whatever you want out of it, has always up to this point seemed to have worked for white people, because they're the ones who are in power and they're the ones who want to maintain power. And so how do we reconcile that with what we believe now? Because there's plenty of Black people in my family, people I've gone to college with, who, if you said anything about Voodoo, Obeah, Santeria, they'd be like, that's the occult. Like, you can't do that. You're going to hell. You're being disrespectful to Jesus. All of that. Well, where did you get that idea from? Like, ask the question, because it's not that hard to figure out where you got the idea from. I think just like rediscovering the great gifts that being a Black person can give you, the things that are ancestrally yours and supposed to be yours, whether you choose to use them in your own life, just knowing the real history of them and what they actually are instead of what people have told you, I think is important.
Absolutely. And that's something that's huge for me with like my tarot reading too. And I'm trying to like do like this educational series where I do lives on my like model friends pages, because it's like so many people are still not open to it, but then they don't realize that tarot was considered occult because it gave the person power. Instead of them praying to God or praying to Jesus, they were able to look within themselves and use their own intuition, right, to figure out what steps to take next, or, to be a little bit more proactive. And the church saw that and was like, it was a power move. They were like, no, you're not allowed to do that. And so, they're like, the power is with God. You must turn to God, essentially. Like, you shouldn't have any of that power. So that's why, like, even like my dad, who was, again, from Trinidad, and when I told him I'm like getting into this, he's like, please be careful. Like, he's so scared. But he's like, your grandmother had those abilities, but, she didn't go into it because she was so scared. And I was like, but where did that fear come from? I was like, the fear is only going to come because of what you're being told about it. But I was like, I've done my own research, and I know that, like, yes, there's powers and, there's negative where there's, good magic, there has to be bad magic and things like that. But I was like, it's all about your mentality and how you approach the situation. So if, of course, if you're going to have priests and nuns in your ear at all time telling you like, that's bad, that's, voodoo is bad magic, or even your intuition is bad magic, or turning to crystals and candle work, that's bad magic. Like if you have that in your ear, that's what you're going to believe. Instead of seeing the light and the benefits of, really just utilizing it as a hope system, a guiding system, instead of feeling like you were putting all your power into this thing. That's what I'm like trying to educate people on along the way with that. It's just like, no, like you've been told for so many years that it's this, but it's actually not. And they only told you that because it gives you your own power. So yeah, I love that you said that. It really is, it's about power. And again, that's something I didn't realize is like you were saying that, that even the white people were into it. Like they were like, oh yeah, they were going to they were learning the magic from the slaves. They were really into it, but they were scared of it because of what it did, the power it gave them. And I saw in my research that after the Haitian Revolution, when a lot of them came to the States, that they were like kind of so scared of them and the power that they had that they were like, yeah, you're still slaves and you're still Black, but like you guys can kind of do your own thing. Like, and so that's a lot of the Black and like Haitian slave kind of generations like are still so tight knit and still have those like strong traditions, because the white people were so scared. They were like, no, you can stay with your family. Like, oh, you can still practice that. And I was like, that is so interesting. That's why a lot of them can still like, trace their genealogy, and have such strong beliefs still. So
yeah, I think what I've seen with New Orleans, and I'm by no means an expert on this because this is extremely complicated and I'm about to make a huge oversimplification, but it kind of depends on like who owned you at the time, because Spanish colonizers and English colonizers and French had varying levels of strictness about what you were allowed to do. I mean, there were periods of time in New Orleans where, particularly in Congo Square, where free slaves, former slaves, free people and slaves were able to congregate together and sort of practice what they wanted to practice. And then as politics changed in the region, depending on who was coming in and who had control, that stuff changed. Yeah. And so there's like huge variations in how strict people were about, usually the English being the worst, about you being allowed to practice what you want to practice, and just within severity of the rules. And that, sometimes went in circles. Like sometimes it would be very free. There's certain periods of time where I would have expected, oh, this is like the height of the transatlantic slave trade. I'm expecting certain places to be hugely strict, and they weren't. And then 100 years later, maybe when it should have gotten better, depending on how you look at it, it was worse. So I think the historical implications of like who got to make the rules at what time and for what reason are huge. All that stuff is super interesting to me too, because I'm a nerd.
No, I mean, it is. And like you said, it's all about power. It's like, who had the power? It's like, it's so interesting to me that because I was also reading the stats and they were saying that basically like the slaves outnumbered the white people, like there was like even more than 2-to-1 ratio of Black people to white people at one point in Louisiana. And it's like, you would think that would have given them power to like overcome and kind of do what happened in Haiti. But I mean, that's where you have to think about, okay, like how dark almost was the torturing, where it's like a group of people that were the majority can't even overcome and gain power, essentially like run a coup, it's like, and I've seen this on TikTok too, where it's like, people are like, we don't even know half of the stuff they did to slaves. Like, like we've only skimmed the surface, which is so frightening. But it's very interesting, especially for me, like coming from a Caribbean parent who, when he came to America, he was like, what do you mean I'm Black? Like, he's like, why are you guys treating me different? Because on the island, he was one of the lighter, fair-skinned ones. And so he got called white boy, but it's like it's so melted there. Like, that is the true melting pot, is the Caribbean. It's like, like, you know, and so for him, it was like a culture shock, a huge culture shock coming to America. And he doesn't even know much about the slave trade. And like, we just watched Lovecraft Country together in October, and he was just like, can you imagine living like this? And it's like, I was like, yeah, I mean, I can, because I know American history, and I know this has happened, and I know this was
Right.
you know, like life then, but he couldn't even like, he was like, imagine being like so scared to drive at night. And I was like, I'm scared to drive at night.
Right.
Like, I mean, like, if you've progressed past that, like, congratulations. But I was like, it's still very scary out here. So
No,
yeah, it's, I don't know, it's just very interesting to me, the differences between like where Black people are from, and also like how like close to their roots that they are, you know, like that they still are able to, you know, utilize certain things. Because I think the Caribbean, by all means, like kept a lot more traditions, especially with the like the uses of herbs and stuff like that, and like natural remedies. It's like whenever I'm feeling ill, like I always look up Jamaican remedy, because it's like it's like I know they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's a interesting dichotomy being here, because in Barbados, because on the one hand there is, but people are very knowledgeable about natural things, roots in general, like the types of plants that are around, and just sort of using what's here to help yourself. And then on the other hand, there is an incredibly conservative, and when I say conservative, I don't mean politically, I mean traditionally, Christianity, just people are still going to church every single week. People are still very much conscious of the kind of language they use when they talk about God, taking the Lord's name in vain, just very much still a very traditional Christian upbringing. And then if I know that there are people still practicing Obeah here and different things, there just has to be.
Yeah.
Finding somebody to actually admit that out loud or tell you where you could find that has been very difficult, because there is a huge sort of, why do you want to do that? You know, that's really scary. That's, you know, we don't mess around with that kind of thing. All of that. So there is still like this huge stigma on top of it. And I think part of it is because people here generally do believe that there is power in that. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, I think part of it is that they've been ingrained that is a bad thing, that you are doing something against God, that's a cult. And so that sort of dichotomy has been really interesting to explore here, and just see people's reactions to it and what people are open to in different areas. And, you know, me, myself, just like trying not to get cursed. So throw out of the house or something.
Trying not to get cursed.
Yeah, casually.
Yeah, I love that. Which is, I feel like a good segue into our next segment, which is called More Than Ragdolls. So I know you had to do some research on voodoo. I've done a little bit. I think the one thing that actually stuck out to me the most was the fact that, particularly in Haiti, not necessarily in Africa, and there is differences between, you know, in Benin, where they practice voodoo, and then it's different in Haiti, and it's also different in Louisiana. But in Haiti specifically, they were able to really kind of get away with it because of the similarities between Catholicism and the voodoo, in terms of like, it's very they don't call them saints like Catholicism, but it's very much like deities and like praying to specific people. And so they were able to use that, you know, essentially with their colonizers, and be like, look, like, it's not any different. And so they were able to like also convert to Catholicism, but also maintain their voodoo roots because of the similarities and use them kind of entangled together, which was so interesting to me. I had no idea.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is so fascinating about voodoo is the American style or the Haitian branch of voodoo is that it is really something born out of a fight against colonialism. So it is there's spirit of the dead, there's spirits of fertility, and different sort of deities, as you were talking about. And a lot of them do, even though in appearance, how they're described are very different a lot of the times, they do have a lot of corresponding relationships to Catholic saints. And so you can definitely see sort of how people took the traditions that they had and then melded them into what worked for them at that time. And I don't even want to say created a new practice, but sort of just added other elements to the practices that they had in a way that is sort of a unique American story. I mean, I think a lot of the times when we talk about American culture, broadly, like North American culture, I guess.
Yeah.
It's about like cowboys and like things like that. But it's like, there's so many more interesting things. Cowboys are fine. I'm not saying anything bad about it. But there's so many more interesting things that didn't exist until a certain point of time that are like really a part of our heritage that we sort of like gloss over as foreign. They're not, New Orleans voodoo is a very American thing that was created and only exists there. And that's cool. And we should probably be talking about that. But it's like seen as sort of some weird foreign thing. And I still don't really understand why in 2020 that is still the case.
Yeah. And I think a lot, like I was talking about at the top of our discussion, is like, it's because I think of the media, the way the media portrays, like you were saying, like we think cowboys. And so much of that is because of the popularization of Western movies in the, at the heyday of the silver screen. It's like they were pushing that narrative, like we're America, we're Western, we're cowboys, we're hot, we save the day, we'll save your damsel from a savage Indian and, whatever.
All the brown people.
All the brown people, basically. And it's like, and even that is twisted because the first cowboys were Black and Native American. And it's like, we didn't get any of that in those Western movies for the most part. So I think the media has a huge role in, kind of what we see as American. Which is,
sorry, go ahead.
No. I was just saying, like, it's pretty sad. It's because of the hold the media has on us, I think.
I think too, it's especially when we're talking about non-standard religions, which is also sort of an othering concept anyway. But in shows like American Horror Story, which I actually love the Coven season, and in a lot of other shows, when there are representations of like a voodoo or Santeria, it is almost always a very dark expression of it somehow. And I think, like when you're trying to make interesting characters, having someone use something in a dark way isn't inherently a bad thing. But when the only representation of that stuff is always dark, always evil. I mean, everyone in American Horror Story is evil, literally every single character. But when every representation you're seeing is that it's some sort of dark, occult, scary thing, that's what people are going to think it is. So I think just seeing a little bit more of a varied interpretation would even help. What are the other ways that people could be using religious practices that aren't what everyone's used to in real ways, and be doing good things, and to be also like not also being the magical Negro in a story always, where
that's a hard ask, Danielle.
I'm asking for a lot. But yeah, even in when the times when it is, it's like it's some kind of like weird almost shucking and jiving character that just comes out and like has powers because they're mystical and brown. And I'm just like, I don't.
No, absolutely. This is a conversation I've had with so many actors and actresses here in LA, because like even to this day, it's like most of the roles that I have booked at this point in time have been angels or muses. It's like I'm never allowed to be a human being experiencing human things. I always have to be ethereal. I have to be greater than, bigger than. It's like even the music video I did, where it's like I got amazing screen time. I was so happy, but it was like I had to be like this bad bitch that didn't care what anybody was saying. And it was like they were almost worshiping me like a deity. And it's like still, even though like I felt great and powerful, and like as a plus size woman as well, like I love that representation. It was just like at the same time, like it's the same vein. It is the same vein of like having to be greater than, bigger than, in order to be worthy of a story, worthy of storytelling. And it's so crazy. And it's funny because I was thinking of like really hacking my brain, like, okay, what is like a positive voodoo representation? And I thought of Princess and the Frog, because while they have the dark, obviously, where she gets cursed, they have Mama Oti or Oti, I can't remember, at the end. And I think she's kind of like the positive, like voodoo representation, because she like literally comes in and saves them. And it's like, this is what you need to do in order to like, you know, and it's like, but still, she was like this wild, outlandish old lady character who you were like, okay, how are you still alive? But but she did show like essentially this way to use voodoo in a positive sense. And so it's like, okay, like at least there was that.
I didn't see that coming from Disney, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Not really up their alley, but they did it. Kudos. Got something right, I suppose. But the other thing is, when I talk about rag dolls, what actually something that stood out to me. So I was in Salem this October, and I went for my mom's birthday before it got too crazy, which is also like still too many people there for a pandemic. But I went on a tour. It was called the Witch Tour, the Witch Walk, which was really enlightening. It was like opening our eyes and kind of debunking witchness, and also talking about how the media has portrayed witches in such this light that we think that's also bad. But really, witch in ancient times just translated to wise person, right? This was just the wise person in the village you would go to, who knew all the herbs and spices to heal you, who would pray over you so that you could heal, and things like that. Essentially, very much like, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that witch is, you know, how we were able to maintain like African traditionalism as we migrated into Europe and things like that. But we were doing this tour, and they were talking about this witch during the Salem witch trials who had, or she wasn't a witch, but she had a bunch of voodoo dolls in her walls, and the power that gave her. And people were so scared that they killed her, right? Because they were like, oh, you must be a witch. But it's like, to me, I'm on this tour and I'm thinking like, who taught her about a voodoo doll? And right. And I'm really like, I feel like Salem as a whole is missing the Black characters who even put this word into their mouth. Like, who taught them about the voodoo dolls and the spells and things like that. And that was one thing that I was like, okay, I would love for somebody to do that story about Salem. So, I mean, if you're looking for a new story to write, no pressure. But yeah, so it's like, I feel like there's certain things that they don't even realize, in Salem, where their whole lives are telling stories about witches, that like African traditionalism and voodoo and things like that, like, are just important in parts of their story. It's like, yeah, you can go in a souvenir shop on any corner and buy a voodoo doll, but it's like, y'all aren't talking about the history of it. And that was one thing that like kind of irked me a little bit while I was walking around.
Yeah, I mean, well, it feels very intentional, right? Because it's a documented fact. Now, what was actually taught, who did the teaching, we don't really know. But that Tituba, who was an African slave who was in Barbados and then was brought there to Salem, interacted with some of those women. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the only time that her name comes up is to either like blame her casually for starting it, but then not talking about her after the initial, oh, they got it from this lady.
Yeah.
Then it's all about these other women who had horrible things done to them.
Yeah.
Or it's just sort of like some casual slave lady reference. It's just very bizarre that this woman's name is in many a history book, so we know she was there.
Yeah.
There is never really any mention of what kind of traditionalism was she doing. Sometimes they'll say it was voodoo. I don't know that we really know that.
Mm-hmm.
What was she doing? Who was she actually teaching? What was the relationship? None of that is ever brought up. And I think that's intentional because I think the people in Salem to this day don't care about what Black history in their history. They don't want it in there.
Yeah.
People are going to get mad, but that's just true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it has become a very sort of white space. And I think that there's a lot of sort of elements of American history in general where we could do better at telling the whole stories of the people who were really, starting things off. And I don't want to say that Tituba did whatever they said she did, because most of those ladies probably didn't do anything and got killed. But it's like, what is the full story, and where, like you were saying, like, where did this stuff come from? They didn't just like, they couldn't have gone online and seen a meme, they had someone that knew about it.
Yeah. Somebody had to come in and be like, okay, like, this is how you get what you want. And the other part of voodoo, I think that upon doing research that surprised me was how very much like mythology it is. So like, I almost feel like Greek and Roman mythology is also evolved from African traditional beliefs, because again, it's very much like, okay, this is our god of the sun, this is our god of the moon, this is, our deity, and like, this is who we pray to. And that was like another belief system that I was just like, okay, like we've seen this in other cultures, and we know Africa is like the root of everything. So I was like, I feel like, I don't know, that's just my hypothesis, is that everything is rooted in Africa, but yet, and so it's like, I was totally obsessed with Greek mythology, and I still am, low key. But it's just like, how much of that, I would be interested to see like the similarities, like as you were talking about with religions, it's like they're all kind of talking about the same thing. It's like, okay, same with mythology, they're all very much talking the same thing that Africans had been talking about before that civilization even existed. And so it's just like, how much of it exactly is rooted in Africa, came from Africa. And that's why I say that it's so much more than rag dolls, because it's not just that. It's healing, it's light work, it's yes, there's sacrifices sometimes, but it's just like, like everything is so purposeful in terms of what I was looking at and what I was seeing. And that was really impressive to me as well.
Yeah, and I think this is so common in so many aspects of American culture, but and this is the part of wellness, I guess you would call it, that I really struggle with, is distance. So taking a thing, I guess you could call it appropriation too, taking a thing and completely distancing it from where it originally came from, and then making it into a thing that white people are comfortable with, is pretty much the entire wellness industry right now. And I think that, I worked on a show that I can't talk about in detail, but I worked on a show that was about astrology. And I think my biggest problem with a lot of it was sort of who the fan base was. So it's like people who have no interest in the origins of any of these practices or who they came from are talking about crystals and talking about dream catchers and staging with crow's feathers and all of these things. And I'm just like, I've nary seen you with a brown person.
Yeah.
Like, and now you're trying to like talk to me about charging crystals in the moon. And I don't even know if that's the real I truly don't even know if like that's the actual authentic thing you're supposed to do, but I know that's a thing people do now.
Yeah.
So I really do struggle with sort of this boom and interest in spirituality, which is cool in a sense, but the way that it is commercialized feels like we're trying to make it as white as possible. We're trying to make sure that it is like a rich lady thing
Yeah.
that is completely divorced from the spaces that it actually came from.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there is anything to be done about that at this point, but it would be nice if there were more conversations about more authentic traditions. Here's why this thing was created. Here's where it comes from. Here are the people who really believe in this as a religious practice. It's not necessarily just a thing you get on Melrose Ave for $37.
It's insane, the prices, because you like you're saying, like it's commercialized, and it's like, to me it's like, okay, this is a rock, like this is a piece of earth, but how much did I pay for it? It's like, how much are they charging for this piece of earth now? Because people are like realizing the benefits that our ancestors already knew about. And even that, but like you touched upon natives, like that is also something that I didn't realize, because I was doing my sage, and then actually TikTok has taught me a lot, but native TikTok, low key, I was on native TikTok, and they were just like, please don't use sage. Like, that is for us. There is a sage deficiency right now, and we don't have enough for our traditions and our rituals, because the white man has come and commercialized sage. Like, and they're like, that is not for you. That is for us. Your people never use sage. Our people have always used sage. And so it's like, I bought it, but I don't even use it now. And I like try and use other methods of cleansing, because it's like, I want to respect as many people as possible, but also learn like the traditions. And I think that's something that's not happening, is like people are just like brushing over like the history of all this, and they're just like, okay, and everybody is like a professional and like knows everything all of a sudden, and it's like, okay, that's cool.
I mean, I would argue as a Black person that native traditions came into a lot of African American culture back in the day, because they were being genocided together. So I think you could probably use it. But the larger point, I mean, it's crazy to me that a lot of the things that people were literally, being killed for, being told you can't do this, you're going against God, you are a heathen brown person, are now being sold in the mall to housewives. And I just
I literally, like, as a model, have walked into clients, and they'll have like the thousands of dollars of crystals everywhere, because they want to like say like a safe space, especially in this pandemic. And I was like, there'll be crystals in every corner, and I'm just like, this is a bit much. Like, even for me, somebody who's into crystals is like, I don't know, I just feel like they're very intentional when I use them. And I feel like when you just have them like sprinkled about, and you're like, okay, this is gonna bring me luck, this is gonna do this, if I put this in, it's gonna do this, it's like, that's not what they're about. That's not what they're for. And I think that's kind of also what's happening, is like this like twist in meaning, and like just like we were saying, like the making it whitewashed so it's convenient for commercialization is like totally what's happening. It's kind of annoying.
I think too, with like when people like ad hoc just grab a bunch of things and put them places. I think in the sense of like when your dad is saying, I think you were saying your dad was saying this, like, oh, be careful of tarot or whatever. I think there is something to be said about not coming from it of a place of this is evil necessarily, but I understand the power of this, and I believe in the power of this being real, and I want you to know enough to respect it and do it properly. Is also a thing that I think is getting lost in a lot of the commercialization conversations, is if you really believe in a thing, then you could also believe that you could do it wrong. And so maybe you might want to like figure out if this is really even something you should be doing. Because for me personally, I do believe that there is something to be said of ancestral power and ancestral tradition. Your intention is important, but the connection you actually have to the thing you're doing and your family, I think, for me, feels very important. And so like the objects that matter to me that I have, or I have, this is illegal, so don't do this. But coral that I have from Barbados, I did not swim down there and break it off. It washed up. It was already broken, but you're not supposed to take it out of the country.
Yeah.
I did. But that kind of thing, you know, that it's a thing that I saw that was presented to me, that was, you know, in front of me, and I picked it up, and it comes from a place that my ancestors came from, were brought here as slaves. And so I feel that kind of connection to that object when I have it. And it doesn't mean that it's necessarily magical, but for me, there's an energy about that I feel like is important to me. Jewelry that my mom has given me in my mind and emotionally feels very different than jewelry I've bought. I don't know if that means it's magical, but it feels like it has an energy that other things don't have. And so I think that there's like a way to be more respectful about it without just like ripping off natives, Black people, Asian people, big time is another one. And then just like disseminating it as some weird Claire's earrings or something. I don't know. The whole thing makes me so uncomfortable.
It's a lot of appropriation, for sure. And then the commercialization. Oh gosh, there was something I was going to say, but now I can't even remember. What was it? Dang it. Anyways, but okay. So like you were saying, like the energy, it's like, yeah, it's like we don't even realize like the people who are often like religion, you know, focused or just anti-occult or whatever they've been told is occult, is like they don't realize that they use magic every day. Like you were saying, like that coral is a good luck charm. Like how many people do we know that carry something that's seemingly meaningless, but to them, that's their good luck charm. It brings them luck, you know, or even like a birthday wish, blowing out candles. That's magic, you know, that's like making a wish. Or, you know, I feel like I don't even know when it started or why it started, but all of a sudden everybody was into 1111. And it's like, those are angel numbers. Like that is magic. That's about, you know, your spirit guides bringing you a message. And it's like, we don't realize like how much of it is already in our lives and we're using it almost every day. But like still some people will be so adamant against it. So it's really interesting. I just wanted to talk about really briefly before we wrap it up, like what could have been, like, what do you think could have been possible if these things hadn't been, like, I kind of always say like blacklisted or like, you know, turned on its head. If people weren't scared, do you think that we would have had like widespread voodoo? Do you think that we would have had, you know, incorporated these more into like other religions, that they may be a part of, you know, like, I don't even know what to say, but, you know, like as the Haitians had kind of entangled the voodoo with Catholicism, it's like maybe that would have been a thing. Like maybe I would have grown up, you know, getting baptized and confirmed, but also, you know, lighting candles for love or whatever it may be.
I honestly feel like what you're asking at the essence is what would have happened if slavery didn't happen, because that's kind of how entangled I feel like those two things are.
Absolutely.
And so Wakanda would be real and Chadwick Boseman would be president. No,
He'll be alive.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it really is a question of who is in power, and I think the only way that those religions would have been accepted and would have been more popular is if Black people had power in the culture and power in the government and power and agency to make them mainstream acceptable and to make them not scary. So I feel like just with the way that history has gone in the past 400 years, I just don't see a way that they would have been accepted for their own belief system, because that's a part of control. And when you decide to control a population, that's the kind of thing that happens. I mean, even when we're talking about earlier when you were talking about like Greece and Romans, those are the kind of things that they did when they would go and take over another country, abolish the religion that's there, and make sure that their beliefs are instituted wherever, depending on who has power again. But sort of, that's one of the main colonial approaches. And I think that speaks to how powerful religious and spiritual beliefs are, is that that's, in your top 3 things you're going to do to try to control a person.
Yeah.
There's something there. So I don't know, man. I do love questions like that. Like, I'm always just like, what if, I'm like the person who wants to talk about what if the South won the Civil War? Like, what, what, that kind of like weird history questions, man in the high castle questions. But I don't know. That's deep.
Yeah. I mean, like you were saying, we're seeing a resurgence now kind of in these, but it's not really in the same way. It's not really authentic. It's quite, I'll say even like remixed. It's like 2020 remix. Like, but yeah, I don't know. I guess I ask the hard questions without even realizing it. But for me, it's like, I always wonder what things could have been like. And like, for me, particularly in regards to what could have been, I wonder more so about the Christianity aspect of it. Because while the Haitians did, bring the Catholicism into it, it's like, I almost wonder if Christianity would be less popular. And then I also wonder if it would be less integrated into our politics system. If we were able to get this, like, these rooted belief systems and traditions more into our daily lives. So I wonder, like, almost like what the role would have been like in politics, because again, that's another power structure to hold people down or hold them back. And it's like, I don't know, I just daydream about what could have been if like Black people were allowed to like keep their traditions. And like, it's crazy because I don't think I've talked about this on my podcast yet, but I did a past life meditation, and it was the first one I did. And I saw so vividly not my first past life, but a past life, which I think has formed most of like why I do what I do in my waking life, because people are often like, you're not even that Black. Like, why are you acting so Black? And it's just like, oh, I hate that, as like, because nobody has ever treated me white. How about that? Like, first and foremost,
those people are trash. Whoever.
Yeah, exactly. But also just like, I'm so rooted in my Blackness because I was like essentially this medicine woman on a plantation in the South. I don't think it was Louisiana. I don't think it was Mississippi, but like, I was the medicine woman. Like, they let me, I call her Ruth, but she didn't have to go to Sunday service because they were so scared of her. But they knew they needed her in order to keep their slaves healthy and happy. And like, they would come to her to heal their wounds, and she would raise the children whose parents got sold. And she was just this integral part of the plantation. But she had all of these pieces from her ancestors from Africa that she maintained. And it was like this very much matriarchy. Like, her mother, her grandmother had taught her everything. And it's like, I just saw her life. I saw her whole life in like 4 different chapters, basically. And I was just like, like, ooh. And I feel like that's why I feel so connected to this. And that's why I feel like I'm able to really be accurate, I think, when I do like my tarot readings, and I really harness my roots and my ancestors. And I consider my past life to be like also my ancestors, because I feel them with me, and I feel those experiences are still in my DNA, essentially.
But yeah, that's so interesting. So when you did it's past life meditation, is that what you called it?
Yeah.
Was your intention? Were you intending to do that? Okay.
Yeah, it was a guided meditation. So I had it's just on YouTube, honestly, but basically the narrator guides you through it. They basically take you to a past life. And I've done 3 so far. And I can just say that all my past lives have been me being the person who is they're trying to strip the power of. So that's why I feel so strongly too about like power structure and making sure that people have equal rights and civil rights and things like that. But Ruth was the most vivid of them all, that I did by far. And
That's interesting.
And I felt so attached to her. And I'm trying to write like a one-woman show right now about her life, or even like a short film. It's reading more as poetry right now, which is where I started anyways, was in poetry. But but it's like I feel so strongly attached to her. And it's like so crazy, but it's about like, she was about the traditions, she was about using the earth. And I think also now with like the climate crisis, that's a huge thing, is like, how do we get back to nourishing our earth so that it can provide us with these things that our ancestors used, like, especially now since I've been so sick this year, it's like I've been trying to look for more natural things, especially after I did that meditation. I was like, okay, what would Ruth give me? Kind of, what natural medicines can I take? Because the steroids are trash for my system. And, it's just like all this.
So hard. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. And I want to try and like live more naturally. Because I think that's another way that we can grow and like kind of get back to our roots and just healthier even. I mean, we talked about like, health a little bit.
But again, another piece of that is just even having the places that matter to you, that you're connected to, exist. Because a lot of the conversation here is like, how much of Barbados is going to be above water in 10 years? And that's a real thing because of climate change. And so, it's like an insane idea that, the places that mean something to you might not exist.
Right. That's great. Yeah. Exactly. It's like might have your grandkids might not even be able to go visit, at some point, this part of you that's so, it's an integral part of you, really. So that's right now. And I feel like my connection to Ruth is also why I'm interested in like what could have been if more slave owners were afraid of their slaves' abilities. Like they were afraid, but they also embraced it because, like you said, like they knew it had power. And so, I think that's also why I'm interested in what could have been, because of like, it's like I felt her seeing life through me, and she was like, nothing has changed. Like, what is going on?
That's terrible.
It's like, it was, Another one was, I was an Indigenous man who got burned alive. And I was just like,
Jesus.
Just like, I've been through the ringer clearly in my past lives, and I'm still going through it in this life. But no,
when you do it, when you, sorry, I'm just like really interested in this.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the meditation, are you, so you're awake, but you're in a meditative state. Do you have a sense of like how much time has passed? Or do you feel like you're fully there in that space, in that time, like somewhere else? Or do you feel like you're there, but you're like watching a thing unfold? Does that make sense?
It differs because I've done different narrations, different guided ones. One with Ruth, I felt I was there. And I felt like, even though I was transitioning through different time periods in her life, like I felt like no time was passing in my wake body. The one where I saw the Indigenous man was like super quick. And it was actually a meditation that was trying to channel my past lives, because oftentimes we carry on problems from our past life, where like, if you got hit in the head, that might be why you have migraines in this life, So I was trying to figure out for me, like, why I have so many skin issues, why my eczema is always flaring and my hives. And that was the answer that the meditation gave me. Was they were like, this was you. And they showed me being an Indigenous man. And then they just showed me like burning alive. And I was just like, because they do it, like, it feels like heat. And so I was like, there's not really an answer. Like, I was like,
there's not really much you can do about that.
Yeah. I was like, there's not really like, so basically it's like, I'm just like going to have it like be on fire for the rest of my life. Because this man was burned alive. But it just, So that one I definitely was awake for, and it was super quick, but the Ruth one was much more vivid. There was another one where I was actually a lesbian during like Renaissance times, but like also in royalty. And so like I had a girlfriend, but I was forced to marry into this royal house and this royal family.
In Europe or something?
Yeah, in Europe. But like I always had my girlfriend at my side. And but then they caught on. So I never saw what happened to her in terms of like how she passed. But yeah, definitely this like thread of going against the grain has kind of been in all my past lives. And then also like stripping of power from me. So
that's so interesting.
Yeah. And that's why I also feel like now, like I cannot work for anybody. Like I hate, I hate anybody coming in and telling me what to do. And I think it's like also partly because of my past lives. It's like so many times they told me what to do, how to live, you know, or I would die because of it. And it's like, not this life. No, you're not going to tell me what to do anymore. So yeah.
No, I mean, yes. Also just working for people is so hard.
I just don't understand how we got there. That we were like, this is the best form of workplace environment for everybody.
Yeah. No, I get it.
But alas, let's wrap it up, and we're gonna stand tall in our roots, grounded. I pulled while we were reading. I pulled a couple cards just to give you like a little send away message. So I'm not sure if this is a message you need for right now, or if this is like something you're going through. But I pulled a lot of staffs, which is ironically about being grounded in your roots. It's like how stable you are, because we think of staff as like, I think of Gandalf in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. It's like he has his mighty staff, right? Yeah. And sometimes that's like his staff. But first I pulled the universe, which is like so cool for you. And this is that deck that
they're so pretty.
They're like so vivid. So you pull the universe, which is amazing. It's all about accomplishment, fulfillment, and wholeness, right? This is the end almost of the major arcana. Oh, well, I guess it is the end of the major arcana. So it's like you might be in this position right now where you're feeling really full or accomplished, or like there's something in your life that has really come to like completion. The cycle is ended. So you might be starting on some new projects and looking into the future, what's next. I like this because it also like they have the turban on their head with the jewel. And whenever I say the jewels, it's always kind of like that, like power coming out. And the purple on the turban, that's about your crown chakra. So it's all about like you kind of celebrating here in your heart, but then you're also like still in this crown chakra trying to figure out what's next. And you know, a lot of thoughts going up. Next, I pulled the Seven of Staff, but I pulled it upside down. So I'll show it to you right side up. So when it's right side up, it's all about being grounded. So naturally, when it's upside down, it's kind of like, okay, we might be on shaky territory right now. Maybe not feeling too stable or as stable as you have been in the past. And it's all about like kind of being a little bit passive and like step back from everything, which is like this. Honestly, I pull this card very often during the pandemic because it's like everybody's like kind of on this like I don't know what's next phase. Right. But it's not bad. It's just about like kind of taking a step back and taking a big look at what's next. You know, like we've seen here with the universe that you've kind of come to completion. So naturally, when you start something new, it's going to be a little bit shaky. And then to wrap it up, though, I got the 10 of Staffs, which is at the end of the staffs. And it's really good. It's all about ambition and status, releasing burden. You can kind of see that they kind of are like, I'm free, surrounded by their staffs. Like, and it's so perfect for our root discussion because I'm going to try and get it really close. So you can see the roots are coming out of them kind of like wings.
Wow. Yeah, that's really great art.
Yeah, everything is super detailed. It's so beautiful. But yeah, this is just about like Like rest assured, like even though you had the 7 of staffs, like the 10 of staffs is right after. So it's like things may be shaky now, but you're going to find that ground. You're going to get really rooted and start something new, and keep your ambitions high, because I think this is a really great time for you to like kind of level up, essentially, like get to the next level. And that's what's going to happen for you.
I'm all about leveling up.
Level up. So there you have it. Thank you so much for coming on. This was so fun.
Yeah, this was super fun.
Yeah, definitely. I hope you had a good time. And okay, good.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Yeah, no, this is definitely something I'm excited for people to listen to and watch. And for those who have tuned in before, thanks for coming back. If you haven't tuned into other episodes, please check them out. And yeah, that's our show. Thanks, guys.
If you made it this far, wow, I'm so flattered. Thanks again for tuning into my passion project, THEOLOGEEZ. If you'd like to follow me, your host, or my guest today, you can find our social needs in the caption below, along with all streaming options and my upload schedule. I urge you to live your best life, do what makes you happy, but also let's be kinder to each other. There's no blueprint for this thing called life, and we're all just doing what we can to get by. Until next time, stay open-minded.